The next class of submarines started by Japan was the three boats of the 1,720 surfaced and 2,300 submerged ton I-61 class. This is where 61 and 62 went, also known as the Kaidai 4 type. So essentially, these were follow-ons to the I-53 class fleet boats. Compared to their predecessors, they were slightly lighter and they had two less bow torpedo tubes. In return, they had slightly longer range on the surface. Again, by the time the war started, they had given up on the idea of a fleet boat. Only 3 were built. This was hampered even more when class leader was accidentally lost just before the start of the war, leaving only 2. Then the third was an early loss, leaving only 1 to soldier on until 1944. Getting old, she was relegated to the Indian Ocean where she did okay until being demoted to training and eventually converted into a Kaiten carrier. As with other older submarines, they were renumbered into the 100 series May 20th, 1942, but only I-62 was still left by that time. I-64, having been sunk 3 days earlier, was clerically renumbered even though she had already hit the bottom but hadn't been stricken yet. I-61 was started November 15, 1926, and was completed April 6, 1929. I-62 was started April 20, 1927, and was completed April 24, 1930. I-64 was started March 28, 1927, and was completed August 30th, 1930. Main armament was 4 bow and 2 stern 533mm tubes for 14 torpedoes. A single open 120mm deck gun was mounted forward of the sail. Propulsion on the surface was provided by 2 diesel engines which produced 6,000 horsepower that ran the 2 propellers and recharged the batteries for a surface speed of 20 knots. While submerged, they used their batteries to power 2 motors which produced 1,800 horsepower for a top speed of 8 knots. Range on the surface was 10,800 nautical miles at 10 knots, and submerged they could do 60 nautical miles at 3 knots. Test diving depth was 60 meters. On October 2, 1941, I-61 was accidentally rammed and sunk. She was later raised and scrapped. In December 1941, I-62 and 64 operated in the Gulf of Thailand to support the invasion of Malaya. From January to April 1942, they operated in the eastern Indian Ocean and then returned to Japan for refit. In mid-May, they set out to support the Battle of Midway. On the evening of May 17th, while leaving port, I-64 was sunk by USS Triton southeast of Cape Ashizuri. The now I-162, meanwhile, went on to support the Battle of Midway before returning to Japan at the end of June. In July 1942, I-162 was sent back to the Indian Ocean and operated there until March 1944, when she returned to Japan to operate in home waters for the rest of the war. In mid-1945, she was converted into a Kaiten carrier. Post-war, she was scuttled.